It is September 13th, 2023. This is episode 45 of the Web 3x3 podcast. This is your weekly insight into the world of digital business and blockchain. Today, we're going to be discussing how PayPal is stealing Web3. Before we get into that, I'm going to introduce my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Hi, everyone.
And her handsome counterpart, Mike Neubauer.
How's it going?
Mike, you're looking like you got a bit of a fresh haircut there, mate. What's going on?
Who, me?
No.
Mike?
No. Oh, maybe he combed it.
Yeah. I combed it with something other than a feather today, so
Shampoo does wonders, Michelle.
Perfect.
All right, so the conversation today, we're going to focus on while the banks and regulators struggle to get a slice of the blockchain profit pie, PayPal is stealing the entire thing. There's the news here, and we'll get into it, is about how the banking world is being shaken, but not by the banks. So the story we'll lead off with is coming off of newsroom.paypal. So this is PayPal's own release. PayPal introduces a Web3 payment feature. PayPal will now allow direct conversion of crypto into US dollars directly in your wallet. And this feature, they're calling it off-ramps, is a secondary item after they did on-ramps where you could buy crypto. PayPal uses wallets that can access dApps and NFT marketplaces directly. And that's, again, in addition to buying the crypto, you can now go through your MetaMask, it's already live, and access NFTs and a variety of other dApps. All these applications, these DeFi apps, are available both in and out via PayPal. Now, as a reminder, my thoughts on this, Mike, you're going to lead with this because this is your story, but my thoughts are the fact that it's coming from PayPal is fascinating. Mike, what do you think?
I definitely think it's fascinating, and I think that it is the initial crack in the dam that we've all kind of been predicting is going to break. This is big news. I mean, you know, it took one of these transaction portals, you know, to take this step to really start solidifying crypto as a practical medium of exchange. And now you can utilize it. You say off ramp, I mean, it's basically spending it to get goods and services that are payable through the PayPal app. And I think that, you know, regardless on what currency, regardless on what country you're in, they are ahead of the curve right now because of the global reach that crypto provides. So you're going to be able to travel internationally, pay for things, you know, utilizing your PayPal account. They've linked and, you know, so many transaction integrations into that one app. This is just another step forward on it. But this is going to change e-commerce. This is going to change all sorts of different things.
Interesting. Michelle, what are your thoughts on this?
In the early days, when PayPal was kind of the only thing, everyone really loved it, and I think that we used it a lot. And now we rarely use PayPal at all anymore. And that isn't even because, you know, Elon used to own it. And we probably used it when he was the owner, but they charge a lot in fees. There is so much ability now for scammers to do chargebacks. You know, like you send them things and then they'll tell PayPal things didn't turn up at their door. They get to keep the goods, but then you get the money taken back off of you. There's a whole lot of all that stuff going on right now with PayPal, which I don't think they handle very well. And even though they'll tell you how fantastic their processes is, it's not really that great. So it kind of makes me like, while I think on one hand it's probably really good because it means that, you know, more people are going to be able to be using Web3 and blockchain and cryptocurrencies without even necessarily really knowing it per se, or it being more seamless than it might be currently. But at the same time, I just see this as another avenue for, you know, the crypto scammer bros that aren't going to make their money out of being crypto AI bros to be able to do something like this through a back door. And that worries me.
I'm going to take this to a 30,000-foot level. Banking in general, worldwide, is one of the most highly regulated industries there is. And the banking rules have been preventative, if you will, as we all know, from the general acceptance and adoption from crypto right on straight through to anything blockchain based. And the interesting thing to me, PayPal is not a bank. They're a technology firm. And all of those banking regulatory rules do not apply to these Silicon Valley tech firms because it's a different industry. So PayPal, if you will, is a hole in the bucket that these regulators did not see. They can do things that the banks wish they could do, but can't because there's no rules yet. And the tech firms, frankly, don't care. They're not violating anything. Now,
So
granted, go ahead.
let me ask you, what defines a bank?
Right. You have to, number one, at least I'm speaking in the United States, you have to get a charter. You actually have to apply to the government and they say, yes, you can or cannot be a bank mining people's money.
So PayPal can issue loans, right?
Yeah.
They can issue business loans, personal loans, and I'm sure they go out to a random bank and they collateralize it using whatever backing they have with that, right? That's no different from any other bank. Again, we've brought it up here that, you know, the three of us can start a bank tomorrow, call it Web3 by 3 bank, go through the processes, do whatever we have to do. I feel that, Michelle, you're 100% right. PayPal has screwed people over, myself included. And rather than as a business protecting that business, when you provide all that proof and documentation, they expel you from the platform, right? So now let's bridge that into whatever crypto or Web3 components there are. There is no 1-800 help desk, right? So, you know, this is a liability that PayPal is going to have to take on. But it's going to be interesting to see what type of chargebacks or interactions they'll have with both the consumer and the business when the reputation is really not the best in that area.
I'm going to push back on that, Mike, that there's not a 1-800 help desk. In Web3 traditional, as it should be, I agree. PayPal is claiming that they've got the same fraud protections and security features that PayPal offers normally in this Web3 version. So
if you transfer, and again, everything is relative to whatever's on chain versus whatever's off chain, right? If these are transactions that are off chain and, you know, under the guise of, hey, we're going to accept this, I don't see how that's possible, right? So like any transaction that happens on chain, it's a one-way street, right? The user has to approve a transaction to go backwards. So things like OpenSea have created, you know, what they call the Seaport, which is essentially like an escrow holding account. And that's where people can put their NFTs up for sale without paying gas and doing all those sorts of things. If PayPal has an infrastructure similar to that, where they would basically take the payment in a staging area and process the exchange on chain after it has been approved, similar to a normal bank transaction that they hold your funds for a couple days, then I can see how that is quote unquote fraud protection. But once that transaction is completed on chain and once that block is written, there's no going back from that.
Yeah.
They're taking that risk.
Yeah. But the thing that crossed my mind during the afternoon was, I wonder if they're going to make you have things like still have a credit card or a bank account connected to your account, which may not be directly connected to your blockchain wallet, but if there's a problem with that account, will they siphon money from other areas in your account that have funds? That was one of the big questions for me when I was thinking about this afternoon.
So does that mean that you're only regulated to do transactions based around collateral that you hold within their platform? If I have a bank account that's connected, it has $50 in it, and I try to make a transaction using crypto for 100, are they going to deny the transaction?
they might.
Well, at the moment, it won't let you buy $100 thing if you've only got $50 in your PayPal account, unless you've got a credit card or something like that attached to it.
So, and again, this is quote unquote fraud protection, but you know, this is no different again from just utilizing crypto as a different intermediary. If you are trying to remove yourself from the credit card and the fiat world, this is not going to be a viable solution if you need that type of collateral to back it.
So that's where I got to jump in, Mike. Do these people want to be removed from that world? Because if you're in PayPal, you're looking for traditional banking services.
Yeah.
Well, we just said earlier, it's not a bank.
And I'll draw that distinction between banking services and a bank. You can get a loan from your neighbor to buy a house. It's a private loan, and that's not a bank. But the reality is that whether or not, there's two arguments here. One is what's going to happen with, does Web3 become bastardized? That's been going on for a while. But two is the banks are going to face a pressure that they did not expect to be facing. from the tech firms. Because the minute PayPal can make money doing this, what do you think Venmo is going to do? Or Stripe?
Of course, until
JP
the
Morgan
regulations
cannot do it.
Until the regulations crack down on the exchange side of things, where they cannot withdraw those funds into fiat.
Which takes us back to the same conversation we've had for a couple of weeks: is whose rules?
Correct. You know,
CFTC,
and where
SEC,
that's
America, London.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Singapore.
And I think that's where, you know, our conversation last week or 2 weeks ago with London, you know, potentially bringing it to the exchange is going to be critical, because that's where a lot of these withdrawals will take place. And then guess what? You just play the currency exchange game, right?
So,
if the pound is higher than the dollar, you keep it in the pound. If the dollar starts moving up, then you transfer it to US dollars.
So we're joined here on LinkedIn by our old friend Mitch Jackson. Mitch, thanks for joining us, who adds the comment that PayPal is going to make Web3 buying and selling easy, and he's a fan. Mitch, I agree with you. But here's the interesting part that I'll point out. Most people aren't connecting these dots yet. If the London Stock Exchange announces last week that they're looking into crypto asset trading, which they are, of stocks, then PayPal now allows you to get in and out of crypto with the click of a button, which they do. You're pitting a technology firm out of Silicon Valley up against the London Stock Exchange. They're now competitors, because if I can bring my money in and out, and there'll be fees attached to that, gas or whatnot, someone's going to make that dollar. And that's there. This is now going to create strange bedfellows in the larger ripples of what's going to happen on the back end.
Yeah. And Sabretooth in the Bolt chat has asked us, you know, should PayPal run due diligence on any tokens that they deal with? You know, how is that? You know, how's all that going to work?
So I would guess very similar to setting up a traditional business account, where you have to provide documentation, you have to provide any sort of backing that you have as to your identity. And, you know, if they have all of these things on record, look, all of this is an effort to deflect liability, right? That's really the nuts and bolts of it. So if they're able to do that in a way where it removes PayPal from the liability side of things, I don't see an issue of them, you know, pushing forward on this.
So I'm going to comment on that, Sabretooth. Back in the finance days, they referred to the legal team as the business prevention department. People have heard this. And so they'll do the bare minimum of due diligence they need to do, because it costs them money and it does not make them money. And whatever they have to do, they'll do, but no more. And my point is, if they don't have to do any, they won't. They'll only do what the regulator says they need to do, which takes us back to the first question. All right, well, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I will say this, though, as a closing thought on this. I really think PayPal is going to completely upend the entire banking scene by doing this. I am sure there are backroom meetings right now at the top levels of the banking clans going, what do we do about this? Because we can't regulate that away, and we can't come out against it, right? You've got the institutional community of investors lining up to get into crypto. And if they can't do it to the London Stock Exchange, they're going to do it to Elon Musk's old firm.
Here's a technical term. It just feels icky.
No comment.
Currently, it just feels icky.
All right. So on that note, we'll go to story number 2 out of CoinDesk. Blockchain.
Oh, and sorry, can I just interrupt? By the way, I put in the article as article number 1 in LinkedIn and in the Bolt chat, so that people can have a look at the article for themselves. And I'll do that for the rest of the other 2 as well. Just so
I want to give a virtual back pat to you for this one, Michelle. Every week, guys, Michelle does the hard work of dropping these stories in, and we're all over the board, but she's very diligent about making sure you folks are kept up on what we're talking about. Thank you, Michelle.
It's okay.
So story number 2, blockchain AI are set to transform financial markets, according to Moody's Investors. Moody's Investment Services is predicting blockchain, combining with AI, will lower expenses for financial institutions within 5 years. They're talking about how this is going to automate manual tasks, modernize the payment system, blah, blah, blah. We all know the benefits of blockchain. The 2 things that caught my eye and why I pulled this story, this was my pick, was number 1, they never used the term blockchain after they first introduced the concept. The financial world is referring to this thing as distributed ledger technology, right? So DLT, they're trying very hard, bless you, Mike, to not use the blockchain terminology. I don't know why, but take note of that. See if
I
I'm
laughed.
wrong.
I didn't sneeze. I'm sorry.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. He laughed.
The
Yeah,
second
let's
thing,
talk about that as our first point in a minute when you
yeah.
finish.
The second thing I wanted to make the point of is that this ties right to the first story. They're talking about 5 years from now they can start to save money with this thing. Guess what PayPal is going to be in 5 years? Michelle, we'll
The
get
leader
down
in
to you first.
transactions.
What are your thoughts, Michelle?
Well, we have, I think, probably from show one that we started with, we talked about the fact that part of the barrier to entry to Web3 is the terminology and the names that we use for things that are not familiar to people. And like, I can't even remember what you said it was called. And you said it a minute or 30 seconds ago. That is just nonsensical to me. I don't understand.
Distributed ledger technology.
Yeah, that. DLT.
Otherwise known as Excel spreadsheets.
DLT, like it sounds like a sandwich, doesn't it? Let's be honest. BLT, DLT, it just could have something else in it. Yeah, that from that point of view, stupid. Like that is not going to help their cause whatsoever. So there's that. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Michelle. Continue.
No, go on. No.
Mike, I know you had some thoughts on this because you were snickering. I'm curious.
It just reminds me of an old Carlin joke. Like PTSD became shell shocked and all these different acronyms. I mean, all you're really doing is just regurgitating the same talking point. Again, it's proof of the use of the technology. We've said this way back when ChatGPT and all these things started to flourish, that the integration of AI into blockchain was only inevitable. And now we're seeing it at the financial level, and it's going to continuously evolve. Not in the AI sense, but in the sense of combining the two efforts to minimize costs, which equates to personnel, computing power, and more efficient transaction times and fees associated with that. And I think that we'll just wait to see whatever acronym they come up with next that basically describes that point.
So I'm gonna make a quick, for those who don't know, there's a blockchain network being built from scratch by an association of firms that includes Microsoft, Goldman Sachs, I think Deloitte and Touche, the big boys. And it's called the Canton Network, as in Canton, China. And the Canton Network will be a competitor for blockchain. It's not ready to go yet, but that is what the financial world is looking towards, because that will allow them to then compete with blockchain BTC. And so this is now me just putting on a little bit of a tinfoil hat. My suspicion is, since they don't control and own blockchain and cannot issue Bitcoins at will, they will be able to, if they can have finance happen on the Canton Network. So somehow duplicate what exists and then regulate everything over to it is my expectation of where the long-term game here is. Now, that's a little conspiracy, I know, but as a former Wall Street guy, I've got a lot of thoughts on the Federal Reserve. So I don't know, but I do think that the fact of, if Moody's is talking about how this is going to transform finance, and Moody's is, they're a research firm. They're not the cutting edge tech firm that you would think. So everyone sees this. It's only a matter of time. The question is, where does the DeFi world take it in that interim until traditional finance gets it built? I don't know.
Traditional finance gets it built. Well, that would mean that they would have to leverage technologies like PayPal
or get
in order to execute the transactions, or duplicate it, right. Just kind of jump on that ship. But again, we talk about regulatory efforts. Once the masses and the market starts moving in a particular direction, the regulatory efforts are very, very far behind that. So the market basically sets the stage in this playground, and then the regulators come in and put up the fence. So it'll be interesting to see with which type of money is going to be invested into this in order to set those perimeters. But, either way, I don't see this, I'll use the term off ramp again, for banks to avoid this. Right.
So Mitch is asking a question over here on LinkedIn. How will ETFs come into play in all of this? It seems to him like BlackRock and others will force change, and there's no looking back. So yeah, Mitch, I agree with you. Mitch is making reference to the big institutional players in finance are trying to get involved in Bitcoin with derivatives trading, ETFs and others, futures, they're going to continue that. They don't need the Canton Network or any competitor blockchain. They can do it on whatever they want. It's an independently traded vehicle. But I think that somehow, some way, Bitcoin is the quote unquote problem. So they need to get that under control, if you will, meaning they can shut it down, verify it, identify it, whatever. We all know the difference between traditional finance and DeFi. I think that there's an effort afoot to, the banking world wants this thing to be like it was, just more efficient. If you could blockchain traditional finance right now today, just like it is, they'd be so wildly profitable, more so, and it wouldn't be good for what the whole Web3 ethos is about. So,
I still have an issue with the fact that none of this is on chain, and they're using the terminology and the guise that it is, right? So they're selling paper. That's all they're doing. They're predicting things, and they're forecasting that it's going to go in one direction or another. I don't think they understand that is not the driving force that can control the actual coin itself, unless, of course, it's transacted on chain. Because those could be competing forces because they're two separate marketplaces. So they could buy all they want in futures, but if there's no movement on chain, what good are those futures?
Right. I agree with you, but I mean, the concept of it being on chain, whose chain?
Well, Bitcoin.
The current BTC network?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where transactions of Bitcoin occur, right? So we're talking about selling paper versus the actual token itself. And they're calling it, hey, we're in Web3 now. We're in crypto. Like, that's not really the case. So again, if they bank on the fact that it's going to go up, and they put all of their resources and funds and client funds into this, and all of a sudden no movement occurs on chain, then the futures that they predicted and tried to, I guess, manipulate the market with are irrelevant, because there has to be a completely separate transaction that is conducted on chain in order for that to have the same movement. Right. So let's compare it to a traditional commodity, right? If you're going to buy futures in oil is sold in futures, right? So, in oil, you buy these futures, and then over time, there's this transaction that occurs where you actually buy the commodity, right? But it's utilizing the same funds. This is a completely different story. You have to buy the future in one set of funds or exchanges, and then you have to go into this whole other realm of crypto and exchange the transaction that way in order to obtain the token.
So that's actually what it currently exists. If you look at the world of gold, for example, I can go buy actual piece of metal, gold, at the local jewelry store, but if I can go to the futures market and buy gold futures and do whatever I want to do with them, so they're totally independent markets.
But so again, we're talking about gold being the resource, right? So in the Bitcoin realm, and this is the age-old question, is it a commodity or is it a currency, right? You can go and you can exchange your gold for a car, I suppose, if somebody's willing to accept that.
Actually, it's not legal inside the United States. Only legal tender that's declared by the government.
Well, you can barter.
I mean, yes.
Okay.
But I'm like, you can't build a business, but with, the legal tender is a real thing. These governments all have their own currency for a reason.
Okay, that I understand. So where does that put PayPal, bringing this back to the first story?
Right. So PayPal has, by the way, I would remind people, Bitcoin is international. PayPal has invented a way for you to move in and out of any currency, in and out of crypto, buy things. It's a problem. It's a hole in the system, if you will. The thing is, PayPal is currently not run fully Web3, right? We would agree on that.
Yes, but neither would a car exchange that's accepting gold.
Right. I agree with you. It theoretically, all of this stuff is just, representations of something else, right? It's a transfer of value. But the reality of the legal system is that you have to have the thing they say you have to own to buy the thing you want. You know what I mean? Like, if they decide that PayPal, if for you to use your PayPal account, you need to, register, then that's exactly what's gone on with all of these crypto exchanges, Coinbase, etc. In the beginning, you could just open up an account and buy and sell crypto. All of a sudden, you had to take pictures of your driver's license.
Yeah.
But again, all of this is relative on the exchanges that are making those transactions versus the actual token or coin that's being used as that replacement currency.
Yeah. It's a good point, Mike, and I agree with you. I think that the story's not finished being written yet. I just, it's an interesting conundrum that's developing. The banking system is caught with their pants down. The technology firm is going to eat their lunch, and you're making some really good points about the chains themselves, like how these transactions are happening. It's wonky.
Well, let's bring that back to what we're discussing here with, the futures. This is nothing more than an attempt of Wall Street to try to corner and control the market. But maybe I'm not articulating it right, because I'm confusing myself now. Like, just the fact of them buying and selling the futures does not mean that the transactions will actually dictate the market in the crypto realm, right? On chain, which is where those transactions matter. And I think that, because of Bitcoin and because there's only a limited supply of it and they're not going to be anything more than that, that's a particular use case. But they're doing this with Ethereum too. And all the layer twos of Ethereum, which we've discussed on so many occasions here, are becoming that loyalty reward and benefit type of chain, right? There's going to be investment. There's going to be marketing. There's going to be dollars put into that. And I think that over time, we're going to see platforms like Polygon that are going to shoot through the roof. And whether they start trading maybe in an, OTC market or the exchange, I don't know. Like, Polygon obviously is pennies, but how can you justify spending your client's money on futures on something that you don't understand what you're getting involved in? Right. Yeah. I understand gold and oil. You don't have to own oil rigs and stuff to buy futures to understand that there's value in it. But unless you're really convinced that crypto is going to be a medium of exchange that people can substitute for products and services, which, according to your previous comment, is against the law, right? Because it's not a government issued tender. I don't know the purpose of this other than just saying, hey, we're here. We're going to try to gain control of it and see where it goes.
I want to roll in a comment from Mitch on LinkedIn here. For those who don't know, Mitch Jackson is a very esteemed lawyer, attorney out of California, and his thoughts on this matter actually weigh heavily. Mitch is saying he thinks with the new inscriptions and ordinals as of 2023, there's a stronger argument to be made that Bitcoin's a commodity distributed via the blockchain because it has many uses above and beyond just cryptocurrency. And Mitch, my response to that, I agree with you, number one, but the Bitcoin specifically as a crypto, it's different things in different parts of the world. In the first world nations, let's say the United States, it's generally looked at as an investable asset that people hope will grow in value, right? They buy crypto and hold it. Bitcoin is being looked at as nothing more than how do I make money with this thing? In the third world nations, where there's fraud and like problems with dictatorships and no real monetary system, it is a currency. It is not an investable asset that they're hoping to buy and hold and get rich on. In places of the world where there's not a stable government, it's become one of the only ways to buy and sell everyday goods. And that's because they can't have their accounts shut down by these rinky-dink governments. And so I think people should be aware that wherever you are in the world, this is a global question. Give some thought to the perspective of what it might be outside your country. That's not something we're used to thinking about.
And I think that's a broad blanket, right? Like, I mean, you could easily utilize it as a currency within these borders too, right? So what could it be, I think, is the most important question, not what it is. And, we didn't even talk about a security element. You talked about, an investable opportunity. That sounds a hell of a lot more like a security to me.
I agree. But that's what people, all the crypto bros, that's all it was, right? How do I get rich?
Yes.
Mitch is saying it's not just a currency anymore, and that's the distinction. Moving forward, like, obviously none of us know, Mitch. I agree with you, and we're not. Actually, I can't even say we're not lawyers. You are a very, very accomplished lawyer, but the reality is, Mike's right. It could be so much more, and there's a war going on as to what it should be. Meanwhile, that's really about the short-term issue of how do I make a buck from the thing. Anyway, I don't want to take us down rabbit holes. I just think it's an interesting thing to watch that the banking situation is not getting better. There's still the arguments as to who regulates what. The tech firms are moving forward regardless, and competitors to the blockchain are being built by really big players.
Yeah, the only final comment I'll make on Mitch is, if he's referring to ordinals, which obviously is their expansion to what a Bitcoin traditionally is, this is not anything new. Right. We gave the comparison to Walmart and Amazon. Like, You know, the ability to build and inscribe on tokens has been in place with, you know, platforms like Ethereum or Solana. Like, all these things existed already. Just because Bitcoin does it, is it now expanding its wings? Did it do that for a reason, so it wasn't classified as this, you know, currency only type of thing or securities type of thing? Like, you know, there's points to be made, I guess, for both of them. But again, I don't think this needs to fit neatly in one bucket or another. It clearly needs another bucket.
Mike, just to clarify for people listening, the listeners, ordinals, would it be fair for me to characterize them as Bitcoin's competitor version of Ethereum? Would you agree with that or no?
I mean, I wouldn't phrase it like that. I would say it's Bitcoin's version of NFTs, non-fungible tokens.
They're
Yes,
NFTs.
Good. That's a better distinction. I like that. Yes. I think that people like Bitcoin worked really well, and then everyone tried to do a better version of it. And that's what's going, including the financial district. That's
well, Ethereum did too, right? But the only difference is that they made the platform accessible to build on, right? So Ethereum has ERC20 tokens just like Bitcoin does, right? Bitcoin BTC, that's a fungible token. Ethereum has it too. It's in the form of Ether. We call it ETH. Right. That's an actual token. What you can do with that ETH is actually mint contracts to that same blockchain that basically it's a computer program that can execute functions in exchange for those tokens.
Our old friend Caleb is saying ordinals are a fad on LinkedIn. I'll say this, though. My one big point is that ETH or any crypto other than Bitcoin can be printed. And that, in my mind, is the purpose of Bitcoin. That's its strength. All right, this is debate. There's debate going on LinkedIn here. It's great, guys. I'm going to take us to story 3 if you guys are cool with that.
Yep.
Yes.
This is a CoinMarketCap story here. Grab, which is a Singapore version of Uber, they're a ride-sharing firm. Grab turns to Web3 with crypto wallet integration. So this Singapore version of Uber, this cab service Grab, is integrating a crypto wallet that will be running on Polygon. The traditional crypto wallets, which rely on private keys, Grab will have a PIN instead to quote unquote simplify this. Mike, I'm sure you got thoughts on that. And Michelle, you have made a great point about Grab's got a serious user base. We'll dig into it. Let's start with you, Michelle. I'd like to get your thoughts on this story.
Okay, I've just put them into the 2 chats for people to look at the story. So essentially, as you know, you said they're the Singaporean Uber. One of the things that struck me with this is about onboarding people, and Mike will talk about the fact that they're talking about using a PIN instead of private keys for a wallet. So not sure how they're going to manage that in terms of a Web3 environment, but they've got 180 million users on their app, and to put that into perspective, MetaMask have around 30 million customers. So the largest crypto wallet in Web3 has 30 million customers. Grab in Singapore alone have 180 million clients who download and use their app regularly. So if you think about that, there is huge upside potential for the number of people to be exposed to Web3. Now, whether or not that means that they're going to be buying and selling other things or getting NFTs or whatever, I don't know. But what it does mean, though, is that if they can come up with a way to seamlessly move people who are paying with a credit card to using cryptocurrencies via this, this wallet, which they're going to use on Polygon, then, we're going to see a huge uptake in the number of transactions on Polygon, for example, side people developing, coordinated products and things around that. And I think that that's something that we've talked about a bit before on this show, and I think we're going to keep talking about it. This is a little bit out of the box because we've been saying all along, haven't we, that Polygon's the loyalty program. So now maybe it's going to be the transportation blockchain as well. So
the transportation blockchain, that's hilarious.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, what do you So Mike
That
has
what
a
you were
running
writing. I was thinking, Mike is writing something. What is he doing?
for our longtime listeners. Mike's running gag is that he will always mention the app that makes people's waffles, which is what people really want out of Web3 and everything else. Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Grab, the Polygon being the loyalty rewards blockchain, which we've talked about, and now as apparently the what'd you call it, the transportation blockchain, Michelle?
Yeah, transportation blockchain. Yeah.
Just proves once again that each of these chains are going to have a designated purpose. And I think that that's a good thing in the sense that you're going to know what your balance is on these respective tokens to interact in those specific areas, right? So like we all have a credit card that's linked to a Sun Pass or an Easy Pass or something like that, right? So same concept. You can do this on a global scale though, right? So we all go to these cities where there's these little scooters that you just dump on the sidewalk, and if you happen to pick one up, you just scan your card, scan the app, do whatever you got to do. This is good in so many ways, but again, I want to be very cautious on the Web3 component of it. While the app and the PIN in this case is going to simplify the onboarding process for the user, I'm sure that still has to get connected in some way, shape, or form to a payment system. Now, if that payment system is merely the token that's associated with that chain, then that's a Web3 solution. Right? It's just a matter of accessing and signing the transactions on chain that is, in this case, utilized with a PIN versus you clicking sign in MetaMask, for example, or connecting your ledger and putting in your PIN that way. So it's the same exact process. You have to authorize the transaction, in that case, doing it with a PIN. There's obviously ripe for fraud. If you lose your phone and somebody can, figure out your PIN, then they can, grab transportation vessels all over Singapore. So there's going to be obviously a learning curve with this. I would assume that similar to something like PayPal, these functions are going to be applicable with fiat currency as well, at least in the onboarding phases of it. And again, this is only going to lead to further collaboration efforts. And that piece was actually indicated in the article. They're not getting pushback in their government. They're actually embracing that concept. So it's interesting to see how far advanced they'll become in the crypto and Web3 component of this. But, this opens up the door tremendously to sponsorships and advertisers and the ability to accept that particular token or reward those tokens for people to get around in exchange for interacting with the business. If I have a deli and I say, hey, come down to my deli and grab a sandwich and I'll give you, 5 grab coins to get home. Why can't that be a possibility?
So, Mike, you're omitting the key point I was wondering you would mention here. A PIN?
A PIN instead of private keys.
We're moving towards the area of these wallets being integrated in our hardware devices. That is the logical next step in onboarding in mass. It has to be.
Explain that, Mike, to the listeners. What's your thoughts?
So we have these devices. They come with all sorts of apps pre-installed. Okay, there's no reason why each one of these can have its own identifying crypto wallet attached to each device. Now, that could be nothing more than a temporary custodial wallet. If you have an existing wallet, you can import it into your device. But ultimately, that is going to be the storage mechanism. It already is through apps like MetaMask, but now it's going to be integrated into the hardware where just by you getting the phone, which now is the easy part because everyone and their mother has one, and grandmother, now it's going to come with this digital wallet capability. So even if you don't realize it, the reward systems like my deli example, or the lounges that we discussed, or the airline miles that we talked about in the last episode, all of these pieces can easily get funneled into your device simply by scanning your boarding pass or paying with Apple Pay. You can get these reward systems in the form of these tokens. Slowly but surely, the message will get out there. The accessibility and the app that makes people waffles will already be implemented on the device itself. This is where the onboarding in MOS really takes place.
So
I think that next year at this time, when Apple do their release of whatever, iPhone 16, I think it will have a Web3 wallet on it.
There's an article I'm looking at from CoinDesk from February of this year. There's a guy developing a microchip to hold your wallet that can be implanted under your skin so that you never even need your phone. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if Mitch is
not
still
sure
here,
many people are jumping on that. Yeah, Mitch is still here, I think.
if Mitch is still here as an attorney, and I know he's not a patent attorney, but I'd be curious on which one of these monster device companies have already filed patents for that, because that's what's really going to separate and get this in motion. But it's also going to limit it to whichever phone is available at the time.
I must comment that we're joined by our old friend Linda Ray. Thanks for coming, Linda. She wants to. She's asking for a company that will make the difference in smoothing the message that Web3 is alive and well. That's what we're trying to do here, Linda. I think that the patents are going on right now to defend what they've already got. We talked about this offline, that there's the patents that are being filed both in the metaverse, Web3. Generally speaking, these big companies like Disney and Apple, it's to defend and protect rather than innovate. That's a little bit of my opinion, but there have been articles about that.
I would actually argue that it's designed more to, I guess, prevent competition.
Agreed.
You know, so like they would hold the ability to bring it to market again in mass, and then allow competitors to ride the coattails after they've already walked their way through and back to the bank.
Mitch is making a comment here. His team's going to check for body implant. I think that right now, Disney and Nike, am I remembering this correctly, are the lead horse for who's registered the most patents. And in Nike's case, they want their online fashion, meaning metaverse fashion, to not be ripping them off. And Disney, of course, owns all the intellectual property for entertainment. You know, I'm exaggerating a bit, but they are the largest. And so all these NFTs and files for potential business lines, they're all just like protective moves at this point.
But they're also the bigger of the players on the global stage. And, you know, we're talking here in the US and potentially Britain too. Like, these are not the hotbeds of crypto. These are not the hotbeds of Web3. So in order for Disney to have intellectual property protected in areas in Asia and in Australia and some of these hot places where crypto is becoming more mainstream, they have to file those patents. And, you know, they have to file these global patents, which is a very expensive and painstaking process. But they also have the means to do that as these global brands. Yeah.
Okay. Final thoughts. We're going to go around because
hang on. I'm going to just say a couple other things about that. So the article talks about their average monthly transactions are around 34.9. So let's say 35 million. Polygon does 60 million transactions a month, approximately now.
Those are good numbers.
So you know, it would make bring a nice chunk of extra change to the Polygon chain, wouldn't it, if it was to bring on board those sorts of numbers in terms of transactions. And remember what I said before about MetaMask having around 30 million users in total, and 30 million people are not using MetaMask every month, I can assure you.
That's a really good point, though, Michelle. And you put in perspective those numbers at 180 million users for this Grab ride-sharing thing. That is a significant. That's the power to move business really en masse, as Mike would say, onto the Polygon would be. I'm trying to think of what size chain they would become. Yeah, I mean that would be material, as they say in the business world.
Yeah,
interesting to watch how that develops.
Yeah.
I wanted to go around. I've got a final thought to connect some dots for some folks, but before we do it, there's a quick recap of the story to reset the room. The article of our lead story tonight was how PayPal is stealing Web3 because they're rolling out the ability to on-ramp and off-ramp through the PayPal app. That's crypto and anything NFT related. In addition to that, blockchain and AI will be transforming finance, according to Moody's, which is not really news, but the fact that finance finally sees it. And then this ride-sharing app, Grab, is enormous at 180 million people. And this Singapore-based company is integrating a crypto wallet running on Polygon. So these projects are getting bigger, number one. They're not just small little local yokels trying out. Back in the day of the NFT bro, it was like someone in two back rooms was making a little project just for the fun of it and trying to get rich. You have massive companies with massive user bases now that are doing real wallet integrations. But I still will shine the light on the fact that the banking situation has not been resolved yet. What is crypto, number one? Who regulates it, number two? And what do we do about the non-banking entities that are really eating their lunch? And that is not going to clear up anytime soon. This is not just a business discussion. This is going to impact governments. This is a sovereign wealth conversation. The money will shift to where crypto / Bitcoin / blockchain is easily implemented and welcomed. And that could be Abu Dhabi. That could be Singapore. It could be any country right now. And so,
well, it's more likely to be the countries that actually get their shit together and form some, bones around the structure of this, because a lot of the countries that are, sort of floundering have been because they're, the skin's just hanging off and nobody's working out what to do with it all.
You've got this all happens in the backdrop of a slow motion resetting of the traditional global financial system. Like everything that's been in place as the quote unquote world order since World War II, there's now a schism forming where you've got political blocks and geopolitics is a factor, and the US dollar is under debt, and there's wars in Europe. So like a lot of things are happening that are going to make people rethink, well, what do I need my money for? Mike, to your point, is it a currency? Am I investing with it? I think that a lot of these, it's going to come to a head at some point, and the banking system right now does not have a handle on it.
You're right. And are they going to be successful in reining this in? Okay, I think the main theme of today, even though we talked a lot about PayPal, is there's an easier process to handle these transactions, both from the business and the consumer perspective, right? So as long as that process continuously gets easier and easier and easier, this is more of a threat to the banks, right?
100%.
So either the banks evolve to either absorb or relinquish certain powers, or they are going to be the shoe repairman of the finance world.
Mike, it almost sounded like you said relinquish powers. I'm sorry, it must be my headset here.
I look, and I'm reluctant to think that they're just going to roll over and fall over like that. If this is continuously picking up, if the consumer base is utilizing this now as a medium of exchange, and platforms that people are used to, such as PayPal, start integrating this into their transaction portals, it's only a matter of time before businesses adopt to this and begin accepting it as that medium of exchange. Now, is the government going to go after every business for that? Maybe. They'll try. They'll pick a few big players and they'll try to make examples out of them, but they can't roll over on everybody. It's Mike, not possible.
I got 3 words for you. Blockbuster, Kodak, Toys R Us. Count that as one word. These firms, they have every right to be still here today and are not, because they just didn't do what they should have at the time.
And would you argue that they were the primary industry leaders in their respective spaces?
100%.
Yes, they were.
So they did not evolve with the market.
No. But you called the banks before dinosaurs, and I think that that's an apt term, because we don't have dinosaurs around anymore.
You can have dinosaurs as long as the government protects you.
I live in Florida. There's dinosaurs all over the place here.
I've seen your dating history.
I mean, real dinosaurs.
I don't know. You come face to face with an alligator and tell me if you don't shit some fossil fuels.
In America then.
My point is this. We are looking at an existential threat to the banking industry that we've never seen before. Never. Like there's never been this is not a calamity. This is not like 2008 where they're going to lose some money and they'll be back. They aren't needed anymore.
Yes, and the difference between all of this is that they cannot go to Big Daddy government and say help.
Or can they?
How?
I don't know. I'm asking this a question. That's the question.
Well, Big Daddy hasn't been helping them so far, has he?
Well,
when Big Daddy's going to lose too,
way more than they should have.
At this point, what's at stake isn't just the banks. What's at stake is the global financial system is shifting, as we said. Who gets to issue the currency? Who's going to control the whole kit and caboodle? And again, with blockchain, we all know you don't need to have anyone in charge of it, but you also can't expect the powers that be to just roll over. They're not going to relinquish control, as you say, Mike.
They're not going to die. They're not going to die without fighting, are they?
No.
Well, we know that.
Right.
That doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that they're going to be successful, though.
This is like putting a toddler to a nap. They go kicking and screaming to their bed, don't they?
Linda makes a good point about corporate culture and greed. I agree with you, Linda. And Mitch makes a great point here about the only constant in business is change. The evolve or die never applied to the banking system. before, Mitch. It does now. That's the thing I would keep an eye on. When they roll out a new Canton network or whatever they end up trying to do, they're trading futures in it. Like, you can expect that the traditional finance world will move into the DeFi world and steal that lunch. The question is, are they able to regulate it in the end or not? And I think the governments are aligned in this case they have a shared common interest in making sure this doesn't happen.
Well, this is not the first time that the banks have faced similar threats.
Yeah, but it's the first time the banks were never necessary, right? I literally don't need a bank anymore.
Well, the banks don't need bankers anymore, right? Like, that was a huge threat when the internet came out. You know, I literally can start a bank account without ever seeing the bank.
Right, but I still needed to go to the government and get a charter to start a bank.
To start the bank, yes, but to start an account, like, you used to have to go in, sit down with a banker. The banker would explain options. Like, these things still exist, but they're again an evolution, a threat to the entire banking system since the internet evolved. And again, everybody started walking around with these little devices that act as these computers in your pocket, right? So the accessibility, the app that makes people waffles, is easy to simply bank now without the need of that intermediary person. You still need the institution, but that is the new threat that they face. Now, I don't see a solution or an off-ramp other than them implementing the same concept that PayPal did, where they start accepting these as direct sources of transaction.
So here's what I'm gonna hopefully bring a little value at this point, because these are good opinions, but this is what I've seen traditionally, historically speaking. The banking system, when pushed to do something like, they need to save themselves, they do things that you never expected, right? For those who remember TARP, there was the Troubled Asset Relief Program. They announced these programs via the government, and they do these ridiculous things that they shouldn't be allowed to do, like suspend trading. Like, if you guys remember Wall Street Bets, and they do things that you wouldn't see coming. I would keep my eyes open for. Expect the unexpected is the advice right now. I don't know what that means, and that's not conspiracy. That is just moneyed powers, when pressed, do things. And that's what's going on right now.
And when the power is turned over outside of these institutions, they have no choice but to either go with the masses of it or continuously fight the tsunami. Right? So if you're going to suspend trading, who are you suspending trading through? The exchange. That's the intermediary of exchange. They can't control the blockchain. They cannot control the way these transactions operate.
You can control the blockchain inside your own legal jurisdiction.
Yes, but you can go across the street and do it that way, right? I mean, you can drive from Arizona. I don't even know if it's legal. You can drive across the border from Arizona into California and smoke a joint, right? So, like, there's regulatory perimeters in place. But again, all I feel that they're doing is that they're pushing more and more regulatory shit against the wall before they just box themselves into a corner. And then there's no way out. And that's where I feel like the biggest threat is coming into this.
So I'm going to add a comment here from Trevor. Trevor, thanks for the comment on LinkedIn here, adding his 2 cents. The Toys R Us and Blockbuster were taken down by corporate vultures who loaded them up with debt, stripped them of assets, and in the case of Blockbuster, put in place CEOs with no real experience. So, yeah, I agree with you, Trevor. That's my point, is that these are companies you wouldn't think that they disappear. They do. Big banks right now are in charge. Don't be shocked if they're not. But that doesn't mean they're going to just roll over. This isn't as sweet as everyone expected. Web3 was going to roll in, and now we don't need banks anymore. It doesn't work that way. There's going to be the other shoe to drop. My prediction. I don't know what that'll be. That's the problem. But I don't expect that we're just going to have adopting of blockchain through all the banks. PayPal is going to be cool, stealing their lunch. Like, this isn't just business as usual right now. It involves governments. So we'll see. All right. That's all the stories we have for you guys this week. I'm going to thank everyone for joining us. We had a very lively chat going on between Bolt Plus TV. Thank you guys, by the way, the Bolt folks. LinkedIn. We are on YouTube as well, for those who care. We're every week here to discuss the business side of blockchain. The purpose of this program, we're not pitching anything. It's to bring insight and a little bit of intelligence, hopefully, to an otherwise overlooked space right now. The marketing and sales aspects of what blockchain can bring to business are not fully being utilized. And we're starting to see larger and larger use cases. And so every week, Michelle, Mike, and myself have a conversation around what we think is really going to affect the space and they have to help educate you guys. But the comments and the interaction from you guys is great. We thank you because honestly, you guys make this show happen.
Been great chats tonight. Very good.
Week, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Until then, good luck, guys. Watch your back. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.